this time of the semester, because things are coming to a head. And also the policy briefs. I'm always impressed in the past, and I'm sure I'll be impressed today, with what students are able to accomplish individually and in groups. The assignment's always been a lot of fun, and I hope you treat it that way. Respectful listening. You know, it's not a class in oral speaking, it's not a class in arts and crafts, and the graphics and the oral presentation will be perfectly fine. Try not to be nervous. We've been together for a semester, all engaged in the learning process, and I hope that you can relax and enjoy sharing what you've accomplished up to this point in the semester. Bob, say just a moment about what this evaluation form is and what the objective is, please.
Okay. So the evaluation form we set out there is so that you can rate each group that you watch. You obviously won't rate your own group, but you'll use that criteria to give them some feedback on how you think the presentation went. But I don't want it to be at the expense of not concentrating on the PowerPoint. So if you find it distracting, don't worry about it. Okay?
Thanks. And even more than the PowerPoint, actually, what they're saying.
What you're saying, yeah.
Great. So, as you recognize, we're going to be pressed for time to get 3 groups in with some limited discussion, as is possible. So, with no further ado, let's get started. And we'll try to keep the time. Bob has prepared a series of flashcards to keep you on schedule. And the kiss of death is to run long, right?
Yeah.
And if you make Bob stand up, you ran long. All right, so thanks to all of you in advance.
I brought a squirt gun if you're going
All right.
Alright, so we'll introduce ourselves. I'm Ben.
I'm Audrey.
Kelly. Greg.
Molly.
So we're going to start with a video to get this to work. And it's a short video and then we'll proceed with the
Cue up.
For decades, we have known the days of cheap and easily accessible oil were numbered. Now is the moment for this generation to embark on a national mission to unleash America's innovation and seize control of our own destiny.
This country can dramatically improve our environment, move beyond a petroleum-based economy, and make our dependence on Middle Eastern oil a thing of the past.
We need a long-term energy strategy to maximize conservation and maximize the development of alternative sources of energy.
There is no security for the United States in further dependence on foreign oil.
We will continue supportive research leading to development of new technologies and more independence from foreign oil.
This intolerable dependence on foreign oil.
New standby emergency program to achieve the independence we want.
We will break the back of the energy crisis. We will lay the foundation for our future capacity to meet America's energy needs from America's own resources.
Okay. So our policy brief addresses domestic energy subsidies and uses China as a case study where we analyze their system of solar subsidization and try to use that system to level out the fossil fuel and oil subsidies within the United States. We aim to resolve essentially the subsidy balance in the United States with fossil fuels and particularly solar energy. Now, so this is our bullet point. We're going to start with U.S. oil subsidies. So the chart. Now this is an estimate of U.S. oil subsidies. Here I'm tracking Energy Information Administration and the Environmental Law Institute. And you see the subsidies have a huge amount of variation. This is for oil subsidies. And these, in each study, were 2/3 of the total energy subsidies that the U.S. gives. So you see that ratio is always constant in all 3 studies. But more importantly, why does oil dominate 2/3 of all subsidies? What is the mechanism behind it? Why has this historically always been the most dominant factor? So analyzing these subsidies in particular should be a good clarification, should help understand why this is the case.
Thanks, Ben. Part of the difficulty with analyzing energy subsidies lies in trying to understand exactly what it is that constitutes a subsidy. In a U.S. Energy Information Administration study of 2008, they found that there's no universally accepted definition of subsidy. There's a definite lack of clarity in what the parameters should be in any study. And so you'll find in looking at these studies that they'll alter the parameters that they choose in order to get the results to come out the way that they would like the results to look, to support whatever point they're trying to put forward. So in any analysis of subsidy, it's really important to consider the parameters that have been used. In this, they were working for the National Commission on Energy Policy in 2004. EarthTrack Inc. is an economic consulting firm, and these are the criteria that they used to decide what would constitute a subsidy for their study. Research and development, royalty relief, underpayment of oil and gas royalties, tax incentives, indemnification, energy bill assistance, site cleanup, and military protection of oil supply lines. These are broad parameters compared to a lot of the energy subsidy studies. But regardless of what parameters are used, in every case, oil subsidies dwarf any subsidies for renewable energies. And the problems with this scenario are many. The tendency of energy subsidies to artificially obscure the actual costs of fossil fuels de-incentivizes market-based mechanisms that otherwise might naturally foster the innovation of alternative resources. And then entrepreneurs, consumers, investors that might otherwise invest in innovation and new sources would probably be reluctant because there's no way of being certain about market competitiveness with artificially supported prices for oil. Lower prices at the pump results in greater consumption, which leads to higher emissions. And by not assessing health risks, and also the expense of climate catastrophes, then the cost of fossil fuels mostly remains unrealized. So continuation of oil favoring subsidies stagnates U.S. energy innovation.
Okay, so next we looked at the subsidies for the solar industry in the United States. Solar energy and renewables in general have not experienced the government favoritism that oil has historically experienced. Between 1950 and 2000, renewables overall only received about 9% of all government energy subsidies. And here, this is a figure from 2006 where it's broken down by technology, and solar only received about 2.8% of government subsidies, while oil and gas received 25.7%. So you can see there's a huge disparity among these sectors. There have been some government support of solar technology, but these are mostly come in at the consumption point. The Treasury 1603 program gives tax rebates to consumers who install solar panels on their homes. There's also a lot of rebates that come for people who use solar energy. But these tax cuts are not doing enough, we argue. Even though the solar industry has experienced tremendous growth in the past 2 years, we think it can have a lot more if it could be more competitive with oil as a source.
The incentive programs that are in place now incentivize installation of solar panels, so that really affects the consumers rather than the suppliers, and it causes an increase in demand, which is shown by a rightward shift of the demand curve. This does increase the quantity of solar energy that's consumed, which is what we want for an energy transition, but it also increases the price, which will hinder future consumption. If instead we incentivize production, this would affect supply, which would increase supply, as shown by a rightward shift of the supply curve. This too would increase the quantity of solar energy consumed, but it would cause a decrease in price, which would encourage future consumption. I spoke with William Wallerstein of Lighthouse Solar. They're a franchising company that helps people install solar panels on their own property, and they only work in states where they get incentives from the local government because federal incentives aren't strong enough. And when I asked about federal incentives for production, he said they don't take advantage of those because there's really not enough. but if they did, it would not only help the solar energy industry compete with oil, but it would also help the domestic solar industry compete with China, because currently the product is much cheaper than domestic solar.
As discussed by Audrey, China has taken the most important step of enhancing cost competitiveness of solar energy. The Chinese government has also taken an active role in forming economic policies pertaining to solar energy. This action has played an important role in the nation's economic development and growth.